What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. We got a game between the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football that should set up to be a shootout, and it's going to be tough to pick out which players should benefit the most, but I'll dig into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Tonight, we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens versus Cincinnati Bengals. We got a 53.5-point total in this one, with Baltimore as 6.5-point favorites. They're playing in Baltimore, and it should be a shootout, basically. It's the highest scoring game on the slate, and at least the highest total on the slate, and it's going to be a fun one to break down. There are a few matchup situations where I think we can eliminate some players from, or at least reduce our exposures to, and I'll get into that in a second. Make sure to hit the like button. Looking for 30 likes to put out the next video. I'll put out a short, a little bit closer to like, a little bit closer to lock after I get those 30 likes. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I am very close to hitting 1,200 subscribers. I need about 80 left. I'm trying to get there by the end of week 10 this week. So if you guys can subscribe to the channel, if you haven't already, that'd be great. You need to subscribe to sign up for the alerts. You want to sign up for the alerts because I put these videos out. I don't really have a set schedule, especially for the shorts, which usually go up about an hour before lock. If you saw the show this past Monday with Spread Astaire and I broke down the Kansas City game, ended up having a really good run on that game. I had first in a pretty much a unique lineup right up until the very last play of the slate where Kareem Hunt scored that touchdown. I was winning 118K up until that freaking touchdown at the end of the game, and then I went down to only winning about 400. But Spread came in first in his contest, so at least he benefited from that. So let's dig into this game. I put out a short video a little bit earlier this week where I broke down what a bad beat that was for me, and kind of a detailed analysis of the lineup that I built and all the thinking that went into it. And let's try to replicate that here for the Cincinnati game versus Baltimore. Looking at the first play of the slate, Lamar Jackson, obviously a good play any week. He's a good play in general versus Cincinnati. He's done really well versus Cincinnati. This past game that they played in week 5, he scored 37 DraftKings points against them. Lamar Jackson, he's always good, and he's always a good guy to keep in our player pool in general. On top of that, if you remember that game, Derrick Henry was being held at bay throughout basically the entire game. It wasn't until the very last quarter he broke off a 51-yard touchdown in that one, or not even a touchdown, but a 51-yard run in that one. I think it was in overtime, and it set up the game winner. But Derrick Henry, before that run, only had about 11 DraftKings points in that game, and that was held throughout most of the game. Cincinnati's been good at defending the run this year. Cincinnati's only been allowing 20.3 DraftKings points a game to running backs. On top of that, Joe Burrow should be throwing pretty heavily throughout this game. And if they're able to do any damage to that weakened Baltimore defense, then that might take a game script away from Derrick Henry, just as it did throughout most of the game in week 5 until they just blew it on defending Derrick Henry on that last play where he ran 51 yards and set up the winning field goal. So Derrick Henry, not a lock tonight. Not a guy that you want to fade completely, but maybe we can reduce our exposure on him in this matchup. When we reduce our exposure on Derrick Henry, we want to increase our exposure on Justice Hill. Justice Hill is the pass-catching back. He's a really good pass-catching back. In that last game versus Cincy, he really didn't do much. He had 3.5 points, but we've used Justice Hill. I think we used him in that game against Buffalo, and he ended up with 21.6 DraftKings points. I think this game might set up to be a bit of a Justice Hill game. But, Baltimore has a lot of pass catching weapons. They just added Diontae Johnson. And let's get a look at Justice Hill's flex salary because we don't want to use him in the captain. 5,200 in the flex. He's right in there with the kickers. Justice Hill will be interesting in this matchup tonight, especially if we're anticipating a shootout game script where maybe Derrick Henry is getting a little less play in this one. Ja'Marr Chase, obviously the stud on the Bengals, has not been playing as well without T. Higgins this season when the defenses have focused on Ja'Marr Chase. I'll run through some of those numbers with you guys. So without T. Higgins on the field, here are some of the points that Ja'Marr Chase has put up. He put 7.5 against the Chiefs, 7.5 DraftKings points. He put 12.2 DraftKings points in week 1 against the Patriots. Keep in mind, too, Chase held out a little bit in the preseason, so he was coming in pretty rusty on top of missing T. Higgins on those first 2 games. Week 3, Higgins was back. Ja'Marr Chase scored 32 DraftKings points. Let's find another game without T. Higgins in it. We have to go all the way basically until week 8, where T. Higgins missed that game. Ja'Marr Chase ended up with 20 DraftKings points in that one. And week 9 last week, Ja'Marr Chase only had 11 DraftKings points against the Raiders. Raiders have been pretty good against wide receiver ones, but you get an idea of Ja'Marr Chase just generally struggles without T. Higgins on the field this year. That could change with tonight's matchup being soft for him, but Ja'Marr Chase, maybe we think about that when we're considering him as a high-owned captain. So Ja'Marr Chase, definitely not a fade in what should be a shootout. I would anticipate Joe Burrow to be throwing heavily in this one. Let's take a look at Burrow. If you look at some of his attempts from this year, he's been throwing a lot over about that 37 mark. So most of his games have been over 37 attempts. And, his defense just is not supporting him this year. The defense is really bad in Cincinnati, and he's playing against a high-powered offense. We could see Burrow throwing upwards of, like 40 to 50 passes in this one. And I think when he is in a situation where he's throwing 40 to 50 passes, we could see a 25 to 30 point output from Joe Burrow tonight. Problem is, who is Burrow going to throw to? And beyond Chase, he's got to have a second receiver that he's going to be able to rely on, because if Chase is double covered against Baltimore's cornerbacks, then who else is Burrow going to turn to? Lately, it's been Gesicki. Gesicki has been the guy who has benefited the most from T. Higgins missing. Another plus for Gesicki is Eric All is out on IR now. He's gone for the season. He was the young tight end for the Bengals, rookie tight end who was having a really good season. That is going to affect pass blocking for the Bengals. It's also going to affect run blocking for the Bengals. So, they were using Eric All as a fullback, all these like run blocking situations. Like Eric All missing is big for the run game for the Bengals. It's also a plus for Gesicki with less target competition, because Eric All was getting some of those tight end targets on top of it. But Gesicki in general benefits without Higgins. We see it with the last 2 weeks. He had 8 targets versus Philly. He had 6 targets versus Vegas. 13 DraftKings points and 30 DraftKings points in those games. Gesicki has come on this year without T. Higgins in the lineup. He had 16 DraftKings points back in that week 2 too. So, he's double-digit points in just about every game without Higgins this season. So keep that in mind with Gesicki. He is at 6,600, elevated price tag. Hopefully that takes some of the ownership off of him. That would make Gesicki a captain option this week. Gesicki, in that last game versus the Bengals, versus the Ravens, only had 5.1 DraftKings points. If we're looking at the points allowed by Baltimore to tight ends, they're allowing 13.2 DraftKings points a game to tight ends. 26.7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, 17 DraftKings points a game to the slot, and 21 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback. So really good situation in general for the pass catchers in this one and the passing game in general. 19.8 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So not a good matchup for Chase Brown. Zach Moss is on IR. They just traded for, what's his face? The guy from the Bears, Khalil Herbert, they just traded for. We don't know how much he's going to be used in this first game on the team. Hadn't been used a lot the last few weeks with Chicago. That was with DeAndre Swift coming on, but we've seen big games out of Khalil Herbert and the Chicago Bears. You know, they're the way that they run their offense this year is a lot of question marks. But Khalil Herbert, prior to this season, has had some pretty big seasons, and he's at 2,800. I don't know how much usage he's going to get, and he's got that tough Baltimore defense to face. So he might be a guy that we put in our pockets for next week instead. Chase Brown has some hurt ribs. He's playing banged up. Just lost Zach Moss. He's playing in a cushy matchup. He's at 9K though, and not a cushy matchup. He's playing in a difficult matchup. So 9K for Chase Brown might be a little too pricey. If we're going to leave a guy like out of our lineups this week, maybe Chase is the guy that we're fading. So keep that in mind with Chase. Let me get an idea of how the pass catching backs are doing against Baltimore. Let's see if I can find any nuggets on that real quick. So the pass catching situation versus the Ravens, according to Rich Rebar, Ravens are allowing 11.3 receiving points per game to the position. That is 29th in the league, which means the pass catching situation for Chase Brown should be good, but the rushing situation will be bad. So Chase Brown, with the struggles that the Bengals have had with missing their guys in the wide receiver core, missing T. Higgins, that could open the door for more passing opportunities for Chase Brown in addition to Gesicki this week. The other thing we're going to want to figure out this week is which of these receivers is going to step up as the receiver 2. Last week, they wanted it to be Jermaine Burton, but Burton was a knucklehead. He missed the walkthrough. He was skipping meetings, and they gave him a healthy scratch on the game. He had a lot of maturity issues on his evaluation heading into the draft. So teams were avoiding Jermaine Burton because he's just a knucklehead, and he's 2,200. They wanted to feature him heavily in last week's game, but they had no choice but to healthy scratch him. Maybe he's got his shit together for this game. Maybe we see something out of Jermaine Burton in this game. If that's the case, then we could have a good situation developing here, because that would kick Andre Josephus to the slot. That would kick Jermaine Burton likely to the matchup where he might face the weakest cornerback against Baltimore in Stevens. Stevens has been the weakest cornerback, and if Burton is starting in this game, we want to keep an eye out for reports on this. We want to keep an eye for any indication from beat writers or whatever. If Burton is going to start this game, they had plans to use him heavily last week. He screwed it up. But if we get that opportunity this week, then he could be facing off against Stevens, the weak cornerback on Baltimore. A significant amount of the snaps, which would give him a good matchup. Burton had a lot of hype heading into the season about potentially, being a replacement for T. Higgins. T. Higgins is on the franchise tag this year. They failed to get him signed, and T. Higgins likely to move in the offseason, and that would set up Jermaine Burton to take over that role. They were hoping that would happen. They wanted to give him his opportunity last week to show what he can do, and he screwed it up. Maybe Jermaine Burton gets another opportunity against a weak pass defense, and especially the weakest defender in Stevens. So Burton, as far as ownership, right now I'm looking at around a 3% owned. He's got a lot of negative publicity. He might be one of those cheap guys that we can plug into our lineups that has a big game unexpectedly at a very low ownership. We got to look and see. I haven't seen anything from the beat writers. I saw interviews with the players talking about, oh, he doesn't need to apologize. He's a grown man. He needs to just, figure it out and blah, blah, blah. So maybe he's figured it out this week, but I haven't seen any indication on how much usage he's going to get or anything like that, which could be a good thing if we want to take a risk on him and take him on at that 3.5% ownership. So let's see. That brings us to Josephus on the Bengals side. Josephus, problem with Josephus is if Burton is starting, he'll likely get kicked to the slot. If Burton is not starting, then that'll probably put Trenton Irwin in the slot. The Bengals don't typically target the slot receiver. We've seen that with what's his face? Like the guy that they traded to Tennessee. I can't believe I can't remember his name already. But he wasn't getting a lot of work. He used to be the stud wide receiver on the Bengals. He got kicked into the slot when T. Higgins and Jamar Chase joined the team, and then he basically was an afterthought in the offense. He had a few games where he would have a nice game, but the slot receiver in general is kind of an afterthought in this Bengals offense, and Josephus would be taking on that role if Burton is starting. Josephus, though, would be taking on the outside receiver role if Burton is not starting, and that, I believe, would kick Trenton Irwin into the slot and make him the useless receiver. So Josephus, if Burton is not starting, Josephus will be interesting as an outside wide receiver at 3,400. He will also have a lot more ownership than Burton, most likely. Take a look at that. Yeah, he would have around 15% ownership. So we're hoping that Burton starts, Josephus and his ownership get kicked into the slot where they don't target a lot, where Joe Burrow doesn't target a lot, and Burton would have a breakout game against these Ravens to make up for being an idiot last week. So that's our situation with the pass catchers on the Bengals. As far as tight ends, Drew Sample would be the guy taking over the role for Eric All as a pass blocker. He scored a touchdown last week, 11.4 DraftKings points in last week's game. He ended up with 4 targets. Eric All, like I said, out with that torn ACL. Gesicki would be the pass-catching tight end, but Drew Sample would have his opportunities as well on some of those quick outs by Burrow. So let's see on the Cincinnati side. Like I said, with Henry, he might have a reduced workload if this game shoots out and he gets scripted out of the game. In that situation, would be really good for Zay Flowers. Flowers has been on fire. He has proven that he's not just a guy with a 22-point ceiling anymore. He scored 32 DraftKings points last week. He had 25 against Washington. Last game versus Cincy, he had 22 DraftKings points. He's been a stud. He's been getting 100 yards in just about every game, game where they're not blowing the team out or the other team is out of contention. So he has done really well this season. And, Cincinnati just has not been able to stop any of these receivers this season. So Zay Flowers would be set up for a decent game against Cincinnati this week. Problem with Zay Flowers is the team just added Diontae Johnson. Diontae Johnson's at 4,800, so he might be interesting on this slate. He's been with the team now for a couple weeks. He did not play last week. I guess he makes his debut. Oh no, he did play last week, but he just didn't get any targets. So, a little bit more comfortable in the offense. Diontae Johnson, he's going to be in play, and this is going to be the interesting thing about this game is we have so many weapons in this game, but it's going to be difficult to kind of pinpoint who to target. So this is going to be more of a multi-entry type of situation, just like on Monday's slate with the Kansas City game. We're looking at another multi-entry game here for this week, and a lot of these good receivers are going to be low owned, so that's going to give us opportunity to kind of exploit that this week. So moving on to Higgins Doubtful, not officially out, but keep an eye out for news on that. If he plays, that's going to boost Ja'Marr Chase, though. So that'll boost Ja'Marr Chase significantly. Higgins also had 2 touchdowns against Baltimore the last time that they played. I think I had him as a captain selection in that game. So same situation. Like I was going for the wide receiver 2 over Ja'Marr Chase. And Ja'Marr Chase ended up having the monster game, but Higgins had a big game too. But like this week, I think the defense would be able to put even more attention on Ja'Marr Chase and relegate whoever the wide receiver 2 is to a like a significant role in the offense and give us that opportunity to target a guy with a lot of upside. Gesicki, he's been basically a wide receiver his entire career. When he had the franchise tag on him in Miami, they wanted to tag him as a wide receiver. His agent did, because he's virtually a wide receiver. He's not a blocker. That's why you got Drew Sample and Eric All, doing all the blocking work while Gesicki, gets the passing work. And he's a good receiver on top of that. So Gesicki definitely in play this week. Bateman, another guy in this Baltimore receiver range that is going to be on our radar for this game. The last game versus Cincy, he had 15 DraftKings points. He had 25 DraftKings points against Tampa Bay a couple weeks ago. I think that was another one of those primetime games. And then this week, or last week against Denver, he didn't do so well with 5 DraftKings points and 3 DraftKings points against Cleveland, 2 tough defenses. But you see against these weakened defenses, Tampa Bay, he had 25, and Cincinnati, he had 15. Both those guys are weak defenses. Washington's come on a little bit better recently, but he had 11 DraftKings points against them, 11 versus Dallas as well. So when the matchup's good, Bateman's had double-digit points. He's at 5,800. Problem with him is going to be Diontae Johnson's probably going to impact him the most, and that's going to be difficult to kind of figure out as far as which one of those guys is going to take the biggest hit. Aguilar will probably take a hit too. I think Aguilar will most likely. It's going to be interesting to see how they play it, because Diontae. Get an idea of Diontae here. All right, Diontae Johnson doesn't run a lot of his routes from the slot. He's primarily, at least with Carolina, he was running 47% of his routes on the left side of the field and 32% of his routes on the right side, only 22 in the slot. On the Ravens side, Zay Flowers has run 37% of his routes in the slot. Currently, though, Zay Flowers is more of a right side receiver, 36% of his routes on the right side. Rashod Bateman has 39% of his routes on the right side. They may kick Zay Flowers into the slot. Rashod Bateman stick to the right side, and that would put Diontae Johnson as the left receiver. So Zay Flowers in the slot He's been doing the slot primarily already, but I would anticipate that to kind of be the way that they set up with Zay Flowers, primary slot receiver, Diontae Johnson primarily in the left, and Rashod Bateman in the right. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We probably take a look and see where they used Diontae in the formation, last week. But Diontae is going to take a significant role in this offense at some point, and it could be this week. As far as the matchup, if I'm right about that, then he would be primarily facing off. Looks like against DJ Turner, or sorry, uh, Taylor Britt, who not just not very good in general with this with this secondary for Cincinnati this year. So I mean that would be a good matchup for Diontae Johnson. Just keep Diontae Johnson in your player pool this week. He's going to get a significant workload at some point. It could be this week. As far as Tucker's been not so great this year. He's missed a bunch, but you can see he scored a bunch over double-digit DraftKings points, so he's not a guy that we're going to rule out. But he's missed a few field goals this year. It looks like most of that came earlier in the season, so maybe he's got it figured out by now. It doesn't look like he's missed one since week 3. So, I mean, he started off slow. Oh, no, sorry. He missed one versus Cleveland a couple weeks ago. So, Tucker, not as good as he has been, but still a reliable guy. But maybe in this one, a shootout, we can definitely use kickers in a shootout. But at 5,400, he might be a little too pricey for a shootout. A game where maybe they go for it a little bit more on fourth down. Tucker, you can leave him in your player pool. 5,400 is pricey, though. Hill, talked about Hill already. McPherson, 5K, same situation as Tucker. McPherson has had a few games over double-digit points. He's had the same issue, though, with missing some of these field goals. He missed one versus Philly. He missed one versus Cleveland. He missed one versus Baltimore. He missed a costly one versus Baltimore, cost them the game. He missed one versus Washington. So has not been playing to the level that we're used to seeing out of McPherson, but he's definitely a guy we can keep in our player pools. Cincinnati, same situation. Maybe they go for it on 4 a little bit more. Ravens D, anytime you're seeing a shootout situation, defenses are in play, but maybe not so much against Cincinnati with a game we're expecting to shoot out, but the Ravens D has been struggling. Same with the Cincinnati D, but these defenses should be low owned based on how they've been performing this year. But in a shootout situation, you can always use a defense. 3,800 for the Bengals and 4,400 for the Ravens. Just expect if you're starting a defense in this game, they might get negative points, but they could also, maybe contribute to that shootout with a touchdown or something like that. Mark Andrews is probably my favorite play on the slate. He's at 4,200. Mark Andrews has been coming alive lately, and they are without Isaiah Likely this week. Isaiah Likely is out this week, so that's going to set up Mark Andrews to get more targets. You can see it in this little stretch here. He had 4 targets, 5 targets, but he scored touchdowns in all those games without Likely now to compete with. That's going to be a good situation for Andrews, especially against a Bengals defense that is giving up 14.9 DraftKings points a game to tight end position. So, maybe we see some more usage out of Andrews this week. As far as his ownership, Andrews is looking at about 36 total ownership, 5.2 in the captain position. So Andrews is going to be set up for a potential one of these cheap guys that we can put in the captain to reduce, to add in more of these studs. So we're going to want to add in a lot of these studs this week. We'll figure that out though when we're building. but Andrews at 4,200 is definitely in play this week without likely in the game. Josephus, talked about him. We want to see what's his face? Burton not starting in order for Josephus to be relevant, because otherwise I think Josephus would be in the slot. Famous last words, though, Josephus could easily score a touchdown from the, like as a starting slot guy. But, the way that they tended to target slot receivers the last few years, Tyler Boyd was the name I was trying to think of earlier. Tyler Boyd went from being the stud in Cincinnati to being obsolete. Josephus, though, without Higgins on the field, even in the slot, might be a decent guy to have in play. I just think if Burton starts, then we want to, maybe focus on Burton while the field maybe focuses on Josephus. Nelson Aguilar, not sure what his role is going to be. He might be the guy that gets off the field now that they have Diontae Johnson on the team. Like I said, that could potentially push Zay Flowers into a, more of a slot role or more than he has been. He's been doing 37% of his routes in the slot. Aguilar, though, probably the guy that's going to be impacted as far as his playing time. See, Mitchell, looks like they didn't activate Mitchell, so that's good for Justice Hill. Burton, like I talked about, 2,200 could be our skeleton key tonight. I don't really see anyone else, though. I don't really like Travion Williams in this matchup against good run defense. And the fact that they just picked up Herbert. Hudson is a guy that might benefit too from Eric All being out. He's at 1,600. So if we need a cheap guy, Hudson, could stay in our player pool. Irwin's another guy that we could keep in our player pool. Last year, he had some decent games. He hasn't done much this year, though. He had that one game against Kansas City where he had 6 targets. He only caught 1 of those targets, and we haven't really heard from him since. Kolar is a guy who scored a touchdown, I believe, in the last game versus Cincy. He scored a touchdown. He's only at 600, so he'll be a relief option for us in salary. Ricard could always get that random touchdown. I would lean Kolar over Ricard, especially with Likely being out this week. So other than that, let's move on to building this lineup. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes so we can trigger a shorter video with my favorite plays when I'm able to do a little bit more research. Maybe we have a little bit more information on the situation with Burton. So you're going to want to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your alerts, because if I figure something out with the Burton situation, that's going to impact my short video and which players I'm recommending in my short video. If you got it on Monday, you were probably riding DeAndre Hopkins as the captain with me. Ended up being the right call throughout most of the game. Actually, he was the captain in the winning lineups, but I had Rashod White in there with him, and I had Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is a no-brainer, but Rashod White I had over Bucky Irving. And up until that last play of the game, like I said, like that was in my winning lineup. It was White was going to prove to be the guy that we needed. But when Hunt scored that touchdown, he knocked White out of the winning lineup and he put Hunt in. Cost me $118K. Won't get into that. You can watch a short video on that. Let's build this lineup. In the captain. All right, so if I'm looking at the captain, let's do a chalky build here first. They're going to put most people are going to have Lamar Jackson in the captain tonight. Understandably, it's going to limit what we can do for the rest of our lineup, though. If we put him in there, Burrow is the other guy that I'm going to want a lot of exposure to tonight. He's at 10-4. We got those guys in. I'm going to go roll with the hot hand with Gesicki in this one. And I'm going to try to put Andrews in here too, without that likely taking those opportunities away from him. 11.7K. Let's put in Chase. You could put in Henry in this situation too if you prefer him. Scroll down, and as I was talking about earlier, that sets up Kolar as the final piece. Pryor will be an interesting guy too. He was getting some work last week, only got one target, but with Burton on the bench last week, that set up Pryor to have a opportunity last week. He didn't really do anything with it, though. I would anticipate Burton to get a decent opportunity tonight. So if that's a chalky build, let's clear that out. You could take out Lamar if you want and put in Henry. You could take out, maybe Chase and put in Lamar. If you want to go heavier on the Bengals side, that leaves you with 600. So in that same Kolar situation. So if you like Henry, you don't think that the Bengals are going to be able to game script him out, then feel free to kind of swap some of these things around. But it's going to be difficult getting those high priced guys in tonight. Gesicki at that 6,600 range could give us a discount in ownership on him. Let's see if we can get an idea of his captain ownership. Looking at Gesicki with a 4.6% captain ownership, that makes him interesting for us in the captain, along with Mark Andrews. As far as total ownership, about 35% for Gesicki. That's pretty low considering what he's done recently. People just don't like clicking on Gesicki. They hated him in best ball. I was drafting the crap out of him in best ball. I typically, I've recommended him a couple times on the main slate. I like Gesicki. I think Gesicki's a talented pass catcher, and we could be able to take advantage of that. Let's do that now. Let's have a Gesicki captain lineup. Let's see what that can do for us. Let's get Lamar in there. Let's get Chase and Burrow in there. Going to leave us with $37.50 per guy. Let's say that this is more of a Justice Hill game. Now let's put Andrews in there. Andrews leaves us with 3,300. Leaves us with options like Burton. We can get Burton in there, but I don't know that I necessarily want Burton in there if I already got two pass catchers with Burrow. But like I said, he could throw, around 50 times this game. So that would be a lot of targets to go around. That would make Burton interesting in this lineup. Other options, I think you got Aguilar, obviously. Aguilar would be a nice option. Give us another guy to plug in there with Jackson and Andrews. If we wanted to do this a little differently here, we could take Chase out and put Henry in. That leaves us with 2,900. That would make a lot more sense for Burton. I think that I like that lineup a lot, actually. That makes a lot of sense for Burton. I don't like fading Chase, but like I said, he could be double teamed all night. And that could relegate Herbert to throwing to guys like Burton and Gesicki all night. Gesicki in the captain. If we want to swap this out, let's say we want a really cheap captain. Let's say Burton. We play the situation where Burton has his shit together and he shows his team that he's not an idiot, ends up coming out having a monster game. We got him in the captain. That's going to leave us with 9,500 left to add another guy in. We could add Chase Brown in that situation. If we wanted to, let's see, we got Jackson and Henry. We got Burrow to Burton. Let's take Andrews out. Let's put Chase in this situation, see where that leaves us. That would enable us to put Jackson, Henry, Burrow, and Chase, the four heavy volume guys in there. But then we'd need to choose another one of these cheap guys that would make sense. I don't really see one that I like that much. If we script out Henry in this situation, let's put in Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is, I don't know why I was skipping him in that other lineup either. Zay Flowers, that leaves us with 4,500. We could put in Ravens D. We could put in, we got Andrews in that situation. So I love this build. We got Burrow, Chase, and Burton. You know what? And as a matter of fact, if we think that, yeah, this is more of a, Henry scripted out. If you wanted to, you could take out Chase. You could put Henry in. Leaves us with 4,100. You can get, we're 100 short of Andrews in that one. So it makes more sense, obviously, with the Chase in. And then we have Andrews in an option. Now, that is if we want to go cheap here with Burton. We've used Gesicki. We can switch in Andrews in this captain spot too. That leaves us with 1,500. If we got Andrews in the captain, we got Flowers, we got Jamar Chase, and Burrow. Leaves us with 1,500. So if we wanted to play it like maybe Gesicki instead of Chase, 5,700. We put Tucker in there. We could put Justice Hill in there. Justice Hill would make a lot of sense from the script perspective. It's more of a passing game for Lamar. McPherson in there. We got both kickers and and Justice Hill is an option in that build, as well as Josephus, Aguilar, and guys like that. But a lot of ways that we can go tonight. I think the way to do it tonight is going to be use the cheaper captain, one of the cheap guys, Andrews, Gesicki, or Burton, depending on if Burton starts, and just go heavy with the expensive guys in your lineup. I don't think you need necessarily an expensive guy in your lineup. That could cost you from putting another expensive guy in the flex. And if one of these cheap guys goes off, then an expensive guy in the captain is not going to work because the cheap captain will have enabled you to put more studs into your flex spots. But any way could happen. It's potential shootout situation. Let's clear this out. Let's do. I think the unpopular way to go tonight is going to be to play it like it's a low scoring game. In that situation, let's put Henry in the captain. Let's put Lamar in there. And let's put Burrow, because Burrow's going to be forced to throw. If we have those guys in there, really, really tough to do with. Let's put Flowers in there in the captain. At least he gives us a little bit of a discount. Then let's put Henry in too. That leaves us a little bit more flexibility. We got these cheap guy options, like I mentioned. We got Burrow in there already. Let's give him, assuming that we have no limitations on Burton. Let's put Burton in there. Leaves us with 400, so we're out of Kolar range in that situation. All right, so if we're going, let's take let's do one without jacks. Let's put we got Henry in there. let's get Burton out. Let's put Chase in instead. And let's put Henry in the captain. Got Henry, Chase, and Burrow. With these cheap guys, let's say they're doing a lot of success with running. Let's get Gesicki in there. Let's get a second pass catcher for Burrow. This is with 2,700 per guy. If we wanted to, we could put a guy like Josephus or Burton in this lineup. I don't like how this lineup builds. I just like putting the cheap captains in, honestly. Let's try this. Henry, Jackson. Let's go cheap with Andrews. Where is Andrews at? Put Andrews in there. Leaves us with 5,800 per guy. Let's go with Gesicki in this one. Leaves us with 5,500 per guy. This is a lower scoring game. So if Cincy is not able to score touchdowns, let's put McPherson in there. Leaves us with 6K. And that leaves us with option like Bateman. Since we don't have Zay Flowers in this lineup, we could put Bateman in there. We could put Tucker in there. We could put Hill in there. Hill would distinguish you from separate you from other lineups that have Henry in the captain, because a lot of people aren't going to want to start Henry in the captain and put Hill in there too, even though they have completely different roles in this offense. Hill does not hurt Henry as far as taking passing work away from him, because he's not really targeted anyways. One target each of the last. Biggest week he had was 3 targets against Buffalo. So he's not taking any work away from him. Meanwhile, with Hill, 3 targets, 1 targets, 3 targets. He had 6 targets versus Buffalo, 8 targets versus KC. Hill is capable of popping off with targets, maybe with Likely out. Maybe they want to use Hill a little bit more in the passing game. Diontae, we could put Diontae in this build too. There's so many good players in this game that, like Diontae Johnson is an afterthought. So keep that in mind when you're building. We could put Diontae in that lineup easily, make it a 4-2 build, and then we got Gesicki and McPherson on the other side. If we want to let's put Diontae in there. At least this was 6,200. Same situation. Can't really get to anyone else in that build. But this should give you ideas of directions you can go and how it's going to be. It's a multi-entry night. It's going to be difficult to come up with a one single entry lineup for this one and nail it, because there's so many weapons in this one. So I'm doing multi-entry tonight, just like I did on Monday. I said the same thing on Monday with the Chiefs game. And one of my multi-entry lineups ended up being a competitor up until the last play of the game to win me 118K. Make sure to hit the like button. Give me the 30 likes so I can put out the shorter video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Looking to get to 1,200 subscribers. You want to subscribe anyways to get the alert when that short video comes out later, and also when other game scripts come out. We got Thanksgiving coming up. There's going to be 3 game scripts for that slate. On top of that, we have a Euro game, Germany game this week. So you're going to want to get the alert for that. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you later on today.